Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. India has two enemies despite all the protestations of friendship, of coexistence. The northern neighbor, China, is always involved, like the western neighbor, to attack India in different ways. While the violence and the direct, clear army attacks have been evident all the time. China does not believe only in warfare where arms are used. It has various insidious ways to attack the other countries. The way China has been attacking USA through funding its universities and intellectually invading the minds of the young people so that they think in the future on the lines required by the Chinese system. They are doing the same in India. It goes without saying that the attacks by the Chinese are in fact very insidious. Today, the first part, I'm going to take up how they are attacking India's intellectual capital, destroying it. The sinister designs that have been utilized by the dragon to influence the various segments of society have been brought forth in a report prepared by the Law and Society Alliance. It was released 11 days back, and the report very clearly, explicitly ends with this clear statement. A more worrisome factor is that China's overt aggression tactics are now intertwined with its covert overtures. So peacemaking, coexisting, friendship are a mask, a cover, a camouflage to hide the real identity. And even these insidious underhand attacks, the Trojan horses being released in India, are an attack on India. China's subtle attempts to infiltrate Indian society through the use of various alternative means, through money, financial investment, fellowships, travel, even sometimes in cohesion, force, are damaging the politics of India. The whole political structure of India is in danger of being overtaken by the Chinese. And I am amazed that despite all the warnings, India has not taken care of that. Maybe India is too credulous. It did not take into consideration the attempts to promote the jihadi thought through Tablighi and other issues. Otherwise, they should have been banned. Unfortunately, the so-called liberal press and the mistaken notions of freedom by the courts are also a stumbling block. But the governments, by and large, have been very systematically blind, either really or sham blind, fake blind, to these facts. China has already infiltrated, would you believe, the Indian entertainment industry and is trying to spread the propaganda through their tanks, so-called think tanks and the centers of education. Chinese companies, as I have already said many times, are the arms of their CPC, Communist Party of China. Companies like Tencent and Alibaba have been the angel investors in important education setups in India. And money makes the mayor go. When Tencent invests, say, a next university, Ashoka University to be very precise, you can be sure that the whole syllabi is going to be molded and adjusted as per the requirements of the person who is, or the organization which is funding it. And here it's Chinese government in disguise. The objective of investment in the education and in the entertainment industry is to influence, to advance the narrative beneficial to CPC. And it also brings into light how Chinese has managed the producers of Rockstar. Recently it was there. And they managed the production of Rockstar to blur the image of Free Tibet on the plea that it would hurt the sentiments of Chinese, resulting in damaging the Indo-Chinese ties, as if they are very sound otherwise. But the specious plea to denigrate Tibet freedom, to ensure that the Tibetans stop their demand for freedom. And this report is very clear. It details the Chinese nefarious designs to penetrate the critical sectors. In education sector, for example, it's manipulating through universities, think tanks, and also using Confucius centers and Chinese study centers. Last time I talked on this subject about the US, I had mentioned that there are 2 Confucius centers in India. And 3 months have passed since then. Now there are 17. From 3 to 17 in 3 months. And the Ministry of Human Resources or the Education Ministry or whatever they want to call it is absolutely blind to the fact. The apparent and ostensible goal is the promotion of learning and the cultural exchange. The real motive, the ulterior motive of this organization is to exert pressure on the Indian thinkers and manipulating especially the youth, manipulating the mind and the thinking in favor of China. As there are, you see, liberals, so-called liberals, who are saying, Bharat tere tukre ho gaye, India you will be divided into pieces, who can also promote terrorism by saying that we are ashamed that the killers, that means the judiciary of India, is still there, the judges are still there, while the terrorist was hanged. Now, they are manipulating the minds of the people. The thought pattern, as a matter of fact, is actually 1984 come alive. And they are manipulating the popular thinking in China's favor in key areas of strategic significance. And are you aware all these Confucius centers and the Chinese study centers are funded by CCP, Chinese Communist Party, and they are in regular touch with the Chinese embassy in New Delhi to get the guidance, directions, and the mode of work. Visits to China are arranged for the purpose of indoctrination, and the way fabulous red carpet treatment is given is something to witness. Besides students, there is a sharp focus on journalists and scholars in think tanks. And these are the opinion shapers of the society. There is a new organization has been set up. It calls itself Foundation, just Foundation, nothing more. It's based in Delhi. It's working on a mission to create sentiments favorable to China. And the whole purpose is that it's discharging the same duties similar to the embassy. So it's a non-diplomatic Chinese promoter. And what they do is they select people, intelligent people of course, and they send them to China for re-education, and then they become the useful idiots of CCP. I agree that all the people who go to the Confucius Center or to the foundation or who go on the visits may not be influenced by such tactics. But even if, say, 60% get influenced, even if 10% get infected, then there's a spiral effect, there's a domino effect. And the small number who start parroting the Chinese lines would find a ready audience. It was seen of last year when there was standoff with China on the Indo-Tibetan border. They began to project first the Chinese are invincible, they cannot be defeated. And then they said, well, in case they win, it will be a bad thing for India. India would suffer, so India should accept the Chinese dictates. Chinese, I call these people useful idiots of China. And they come and make their commands on the TV stations, radio commentators, think tanks, as defense experts. And last time they suggested that the Chinese had launched attack in Ladakh in retaliation for abrogation of Article 370. And there was a distinct possibility of the two-front war. Now tell me, how is China impacted by the abrogation of Article 370? Or how is any country in the world affected by that? It is India's internal affair, a conflict possibly, if there is there, between the center and the state. Nobody else is affected. So, people were misled by these so-called experts. And I have seen that so-called defense experts are absolute nincompoops. When I see them on watch, I laugh at them. I posted on Facebook yesterday how one so-called authority posted a picture of the movie from England to say that the Pakistanis in Panjshir have been killed. Now these people coming back, they in the last conflict with China, they projected that since China had created the strategic support force, India command and control system would be paralyzed, causing devastation. They did not even hint at the known Chinese worries expressed publicly that the two nuclear powers have limits to go for violent clash. No, they'll hide the facts. So these useful idiots become invaluable to China to project favorable their point of view. Now there are two types of these useful idiots. First is the left-wing journalists and academics who hate Western capitalism and culture and sympathize with Chinese system politically. And the second, the people who can look past the reality of CCP, but they are impacted by the financial gains, fellowships, and hospitality. Now, China, what it does, it uses CCP, the Communist Party of China, and they appoint intellectuals and academicians, brainwash them. And then, with their help, journals and magazines are produced for projecting the Chinese point of view. And the contributors are highly paid. Normally, the contributions are $2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees. Here, in one instance, I know they paid 100,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees. So the articles published are critical of India. They say Indian foreign policy is harmful. It's anti-national. And they also give the publications which publish such stupid articles huge advertisements to publicize their views. Not only that, the Chinese embassy last month had the audacity to ask the independent media not to cover Taiwan-related news or about this national day. Imagine Taiwan's national day was not covered by the media because they had been paid. So misuse of the social media is also there. And several fake accounts have been brought to the notice. China has made huge investment in top 3 apps in India. And these apps bring forth that the CCP band of internet trolls. And do you know what they call them? 50% army. or 50% party, depending. So these, and their work is towards building pro-China narrative. Then, China also uses the broadcast media to push the Chinese narrative in India. And the main target, India, and second, CTA, Tibetan and Central Tibetan Administration. So they target Dalai Lama. One useful idiot went to the extent of suggesting that Dalai Lama is a greater threat to India than Masood Azhar or Jamaat-e-Islami. And those people have been designated by UN Security Council as terrorists. Not Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama was the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. But no, they went to the extent that he's a greater threat to India. And beauty is that many people believe it because they don't use their brain to analyze. You see, in September 2020 last year, Lao Sang was arrested by Enforcement Directorate in India. And shocking revelations of the Chinese Minister of State Security came into being. Sang was running a hawala of 1,000 crores rupees. And the whole money was to be spent to sabotage Dalai Lama and Tibetan freedom struggle. This amount was used to pay for spying on Dalai Lama, and also there were attempts to control Buddhist monasteries in the border areas. Now imagine letting China have a free hand in India's disasters. And yet I'm amazed that the Foreign Ministry, the Home Ministry, raw intelligence agencies are not doing anything. The purpose of China is to target the bright, impressionable minds. A, the tech-savvy youth. B, opinion makers and intelligentsia. And thus, the future of India in totality. This insidious attack has to be stopped today. For example, the use of Huawei and ZTE for espionage is well known and has been internationally condemned. Basically, China is using a three-war strategy to change the perceptions of the important person, the strategic and influential community in India. And this they are not doing in India, they are doing everywhere. They are doing in Canada, they are doing in USA, and Canadian government is equally blind to this problem. I happened to have a look at a very top confidential document, China's elite capture. This has been compiled by a former MI6 officer, military intelligence 6 of UK. The name is Christopher Steele, and it gives the details of the manipulation of China and its telecom giant Huawei to penetrate the strategic and influential community of UK and manipulating them. There is the Global Watch analysis by Ronald Jackert. He also points that China is using corrupt leaders in India. The corrupt leaders are easily purchasable, but then being the leaders, being MPs and the ministers, they are useful idiots. They have done the same in Nepal, only was on the payroll of Chinese. So what's happening is, China is not only furthering the business interest of these corrupt leaders, but they then help China to penetrate the nation's law building, and the purpose is to have and ensure a long-term influence and alter the way of thinking. China has also intensified map war and projects its area in its periphery. Now they have come with a new method. They are advertising their claims in scientific journals to influence people who are not very much aware about the dispute. Now, tourists are sent to these different places and they wear t-shirts depicting the expanded Chinese areas. And then they distribute extra t-shirts to the people. So the young people, especially in the poor areas, wear them. What is needed is an in-depth investigation of the Chinese devilish activities, diabolical activities that are manipulating the Indian society. It should be ensured that they are not involved in the decision-making process, and the government needs to come up with the legislation and the court should be asked to keep shut so that such useful idiots who are already there are eliminated. Government has also got to ensure to expose the fallacious propaganda being carried out by these useful idiots. And at the same time, India has to build its own narrative based on verifiable facts. As a matter of fact, in this way, ICCCR, Indian Council of Cultural Relations, should play a dominant role. But really, ICCR was set up for such a purpose, but it has never performed that. It's only content with showing the dances by Sonal Mansingh and other dancers and the songs and things like that. But the real useful work in molding the minds is not being done. What is required is that the armed forces and the political leadership have to gird up their loins, have to wake up their reality. They are aware. No, if I say they are not aware, the Indian intelligence is not that bad. But they are not taking proactive action. And in view of the Dragon's influence operations, Operation Mind, I'll call it, it requires a greater push. If India wants to beat China in the information war, then it needs a better and stronger counter strategy. Lack of self-effective response to the Chinese information war can create an impression in the minds of the people that maybe what Chinese are saying is correct. Maybe Indians are not really right. That question of maybe then is transmuted to yes. Any wavering would be transmuted into yes. So, what we have got to do is that the impressionable minds have got to be given the proper feedback, proper impact. So the impression of CCP decision-making body is not accepted. And until India adopts a proactive approach, and Canada adopts it, there is a danger to the society being decimated by the termites of this cultural invasion. Is the government of India and Canada listening? If they are not, they better do. Until they are suffering from a death wish. And in that case, nobody can help them. Thank you.